Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. I'm struggling a little bit with a cold, so I'm not going to talk too much today. Appreciate you being here. I knew our numbers were going to be light today because of the last month and a half of snow days. So primarily I have two things I want to get through today is giving you time if you have not yet gotten a chance to catch up on your implementation guide to do that. And secondly, to kind of finish up some of the reading that we had started last time, which was, what, November? Is it really that long ago? Wow. And I feel like you're all growing up before my eyes so fast. Carolyn just made a plug up for what's on the screen there. She posted it in the Google Classroom for the Math in Action event happening Saturday at Grand Valley. 2019 event is going to be action-packed with Carolyn as a speaker. So if you're interested in that, she posted the information on the Google Classroom for you to do that. Excuse me. Anybody else have to deal with a cold this year? Oh, how long did yours last?
I'm on week 4 and I'm still not over.
I can kind of hear you're still kind of stuffed up a little bit. So.
And I've been on antibiotics because they thought maybe it was an infection.
Okay. I'm feeling better, but I'm on day 3, so it's still early for
4
me.
weeks.
Yeah. What about you? Yours was...
Yeah, mine just started like this week too.
Okay. So we're in the same club.
Yeah.
Fun. I thought I was going to make it through this year, but I think that's the detriment for me of being out of the classroom is my immune system is going to pay for it. Let's see if this is going to work. Guess not. So purpose for meeting is still to work on those strategies for creating a collaborative and inclusive learning environment. We talked about in the past why this is important and remembering why we're here to do that. And so that video I showed months ago is still linked there for you to refer to if you prefer to review that at some point or use that in your own classroom at some time. We have an inclusion activity to start with, and you're kind of already grouped up, so we'll just stick with where you're at. But in groups of 2 or 3, they're asking that we produce as many non-obvious things that your partnership or trio, or in case of over here foursome, might have in common. So you're going to try to generate a list of 3 items that your group has in common and be prepared to share them with the whole group. Try to make these things that aren't super obvious, like we all work at the same school district, for example, because I know that's how we all tend to sit. Usually, I know you two didn't, but that's how we all tend to sit at PDs. So it'll only take about 2 minutes. And in your group, jot down a list of at least 3 items in your group that you have in common that are maybe not so obvious things. So you can discover new things about each other. All right, we will stop where you're at, and whether you have 3, 5 things, or 1 or 0 things, that's fine. So I'm going to ask for each group to kind of share out some of the things they've discovered that have in common. Is there a group that'd like to start us out? Go ahead.
We're all math teachers.
You're all math teachers. Was there anything else?
We're moms.
We're all moms.
We struggle for sure.
That's for sure. It's been a rough month or so for moms, I think.
Oh, my family struggled to find something in common.
Oh, well, that too. Gotcha.
We have all struggled.
Yes.
There we go. I'm sure we all have patience.
Yes, I'm sure. Much more than most. What about this group?
We said we all like camping.
Okay.
We all like pizzas, especially like the create your own kind. We're all a fan of pineapple on our pizza, which I
Really?
think is kind of hot topic.
I'm not a pineapple guy. No.
And then in high school, we realized we all played woodwind instruments.
No kidding. No, that's crazy. All right. Thank you. What about our partnership over to my right here?
We both have worked at a bank in the past. We both had flooding-related building closures as part of our snow day. We both prefer that our students bribe us with chocolate. She grew up in Cedar Springs. I now work in Cedar Springs. Her school mascot, Iona Schools, is the Bulldogs, and I went to Ferris, which is the Bulldogs. And we both have the same MichME stickers on our laptops.
Ah, fancy. All kinds of commonality over there. And what about for you two?
We learned that we both are teaching the same math curriculum, which is Big Ideas Math, and that we both really enjoy it. It's the first year it's implemented in both of our buildings, so that's been kind of a a learning curve for both of us.
Okay.
We both have dogs.
Remind me which building you're at?
I'm at Kennewa Hills Middle School.
Kennewa, yep, and you're at Fremont, yep. Fantastic. All right, well, thank you for indulging in that activity there, and it's amazing how we've met 3 times and we're still learning more about each other. Our outcomes are the same as they've been. Really, it's just honing in on the implementation of some of the strategies we've been talking about, or we'll continue to talk about today. And we have one more meeting after this, I think, to wrap things up. This is our mission statement. I still have the paper posted by my desk. It's over here right now since the beginning of the year. Was that September or October when we first met? I think September. So we're really working on those collaborative and safe environment strategies. We talked about that you can't just expect it to be safe by saying this is a safe environment. And so we've been looking at some strategies, specifically with the last meeting out of that book that helped develop a safe environment. And we looked at the norms of collaboration to help us facilitate a collaborative environment. And so we're just going to continue to kind of unwrap what where we left off at last time. Again, I knew we wouldn't have a lot of people here today, but I also know we needed some time to finish up reading some of those pages from that book. Does anybody still have copies from last time, by the way? It's okay if you don't, because I made more copies, but if you do have copies of either the book I did not illegally copy, which looks like this, or this green paper, I have more copies of these things too, so that you don't have and didn't take with you. And so what I'll do is I'll just put these. Yeah, here, go ahead.
Thank you.
Yep. You're welcome. Anyone else at this table? Okay. Anybody else? I'm bringing the platter around. You can just kind of push it around. Yes, those 2 things. Ugh. Thank you. I do too. I'm just trying to avoid it. I'm trying to avoid accepting it. You guys are both good, and you're both good over here. We'll put that right there. So we'll kind of finish up that. There's just a few more pages, kind of skim through there, and I'll let you kind of divvy that up how you want. So again, this is where we've left off in the past. Norms of collaboration. Pausing, paraphrasing, posing questions, putting ideas on the table, providing data, paying attention to self and others, and presuming positive intentions. And then in the reading, what we tried to get through last time were those pages that are listed there on the slide, including listening patiently and actively, policing your voice, if you have a voice, because you don't have a cold, and practice listening. And maybe not all the groups got through all of that last time, but you certainly have. You can take these back home with you without me knowing, of course, and read through the rest of that if you didn't get through it last time. I know that I went through all of the implementation guides yesterday, and if I made a comment on yours that said, hey, let me know if I can help you with your implementation guide, it wasn't meant to be like, hey, why aren't you doing this? It was more of a either A, just reminding you we were meeting today, or B, me seeing if you're actually coming. Because some people were replying back, I won't be there tomorrow, which was good for me to know. Or D, like, I think I skipped a letter. C, actually just legitimately saying, can I help you with anything on this? But I know that the reality of the snow days we've had have made it probably difficult to practice with fidelity some of the things we've talked about. I'm realistic about that. I've taught for 16 years. I get it. But I'm still going to try to encourage you to find ways to implement some of these strategies in a remaining time with your kiddos, particularly with the norms of collaboration. So just kind of be mindful of that. So if you have not implemented with fidelity, still think about your opportunities moving forward to try these strategies. And is the conversation I had before we met today about taking the time to paraphrase in the classroom, and yes, recognizing that that does take some time out of your schedule, but with the hope that you regain that time back on the latter end. So keep those things in mind, that although it may seem like it takes up some of the time you need to do things to get through your curriculum, you may actually gain time back on the back end because you're doing those things. Really what I'd like to do is take a moment for you to pull up your implementation guides and either A, add some information if you're behind in that, or B, just review what you've written in there to this point. If you don't know how to get to those, I think they're in your Google Classroom site. So I'm going to pause for that. And then after that, so if you need to continue to work through that and add to your implementation guide, please do so today as we're meeting, while you have this time pulled away from your classroom to do that. That was very interesting to read what's written in there so far. And some people have had an opportunity to take some video of their classes practicing some of these strategies, and I thoroughly enjoyed watching those, and just to see. I love getting in other classrooms and just seeing what the environment is like. I don't know. It's not that I like to see what people are doing right or wrong. I just love seeing how people organize their classrooms differently. And how many times as a teacher do you get to leave your classroom to see other classes in action? It's probably not often enough. And I've had an opportunity to observe a couple of the classrooms from some of you in here, and it was just great for me just to see the things you had on your walls and how you structured your classes and how you interacted with your kiddos. Those things were pretty awesome. And so the same thing with these videos, to see how you got to interact with your kids outside of the setting of this room right here, and to see you working your magic was really awesome for me to watch, and I loved seeing that. So for those who were able to post information and evidence in their implementation guide, there was a lot of deep reflection that I read about. And so there were some things where people were like, hey, I tried this and I don't think it worked very well. But they were able to reflect upon why they thought that maybe wasn't going as well as they had hoped. And I'm hoping that that's going to lead to change in the future for both positive for both the teacher and for the students. So just as a blanket question to all of you who are here right now, for those who had a chance to try something, what's been going well so far in your classroom?
In our building, so 6th through 8th grade, we decided we're a personal mastery district, and so we grouped our students based on where they're at and let them move forward at their pace.
Okay.
Time to be the variable, so to speak, but it's kind of is and kind of isn't.
Okay.
Going along with that, the dialogue that the students have when they're working with their table mates that are in the same subject, same part of the chapter as they are, has been pretty powerful in some cases. And I called in one of our district people the other day to just kind of observe what's going on and give me some feedback as to where to go next and how to push further. And I was frustrated because the same 10 kids are off task and doing whatever out of 34 kids or whatever. And he said, why aren't you celebrating those kids that are doing what they're supposed to? There's 2/3 of this room that are doing exactly what you've asked them to do.
Right.
Instead of putting the focus on those 10 that may be off task. And some of them were just like spontaneously off task and then they come back and then they go back out. So it was just kind of like a nice aha moment of, yeah, you're right, I do need to celebrate that most of them are doing what I'm asking them to do.
Right.
It's easy to lose sight of that. But some of their conversations and the way they guide each other through problems is interesting to hear.
Especially for a district which celebrates like employability skills,
Yeah.
and the collaboration aspect is key in the workforce. So that's great to see for Chemical Hill specifically, because I know it ties along with a lot of the work that the district supports. I had a lot of conversations with Mike Birdie about some of these things over there. So I find that, I think it's true that for whatever it is, evolutionary reasons, that our brains tend to fixate on negative aspects more than positive aspects. And I suppose that's a survival strategy of some sort that we've grown with. So there's always that tendency to focus on the negative more than the positive. So it's helpful to have somebody to kind of redirect your thinking in that sense.
Yeah, and just shed a different light on, what they see, because that's what I saw was sheer chaos. And what he saw was, yeah, you got 4 boys over here playing, but like at
Right.
the end of the day, is that the worst possible thing? They weren't pulling anyone else off task, just they were in their own little world over
Right.
there. And okay, I get it.
Right. But you go into a classroom sometimes and it sounds like it's just all chaos. But when you really sit down and listen to what's going on, you recognize that it's oftentimes more on task than you give it credit for, right? And I was talking with Carolyn. I got a chance to go in her classroom like a month ago now, before the snowpocalypse hit. And I actually heard student talk going on throughout her classroom. And one kid at one point just spontaneously said, "Oh, there's another way we can do this problem." And it wasn't something that Carolyn had, pulled out of him. It just came out from his interactions with his classmates. And so that was just really cool to see the moments like that. What else might be going well in your classroom?
I know we talked a lot in the first couple sessions about framework about learning. And so the geometry teachers at my school, we kind of got together to write out all of the learning intentions and success criteria for the year. And I think that was successful because now we kind of all know how we're going to align our instruction, and we were very careful in thinking about, okay, if this is the goal, then why are we testing it in this like completely different way? And how do we align not only our assessments to our teaching, but our teaching to like the way that we ask questions in class or the kinds of tasks that we're asking them to do. So I feel like all of us had a lot more clarity going into our like instructional decisions because of the focus that we've had on setting a clear learning intention and success criteria where students can measure their own successes.
So, loaded question. How do you think the students feel about that?
I mean, we just kind of began the work, so I don't know how much we have like verbalized it to them.
Okay.
I think some of us will like write it on our board. So I think like for me personally, I think I can still improve on how do I make those success criteria like visible and accessible to my students.
Okay.
Do they want it on a paper? Should I just talk about it?
Right.
But I think that's definitely like moving forward.
So I'm gonna
Sometimes I do have like a slide or something, and we talk about it. But I feel like I need to be more intentional about them, like having an exit ticket that actually addresses those things, so they get better at assessing.
Word, but have appreciated having the success criteria as part of the learning objective. Just knowing for them that this learning objective for so many years was just something I just put up, and it was like, yeah, you want us to do it, but it's not relevant to me. And having that success criteria, they go, oh, when you tell me I have to be able to get the number of solutions based on the degree of a polynomial, like, and I need to know that, and then I can double check it by doing this. When you give me my exit ticket and I'm able to do this, I got it. Like, and I feel okay leaving. Like, I'm not muddied in what I was really supposed to do. And so to me, those success criteria this year have changed a lot of my student stuff. There, as the box that many of the teachers felt like we had to do.
Yeah. So I'm going to go on a limb and think that you're probably 5D, is my guess, on your evaluation. Yeah. But it'd be the Danielson model then with the success criteria and learning targets. So at KIH last year, we switched over to that model as well. And that was my goal, was the learning targets, success criteria. So that was where I felt like I was weakest in. And the reason I asked the question, said, oh, this is probably a loaded question, but I started practicing putting it up on the board, making it very visible, being very obvious about how I communicated to my students that this is what we're going to be covering and this is why we're covering it. And like you said, trying to make sure it was targeted so my quizzes weren't on something else. It was specific back to my success criteria and learning targets. And one of my students actually said to me, I appreciate you putting it on the board, that helps me focus on what we're doing. And it was like you would expect that's what the students would think, but to hear them actually articulate that was like a kick in the face. It's like, whoa, man, what are they doing wrong?
Last year, you put them up there, you talk about them, and I say, yes, I do, but not probably to the depth I should. And he goes, I noticed 14 kids walk in and look for that statement when they walked in.
Huh.
And I was like, really? Like,
right.
I mean, I just stuff on the book and I'm thinking, no, they care. They like want to know. And that started the conversation, because for many of us, when we moved to that evaluation tool, it was like, that's something to get a 4.
Yeah.
Like, if you have 4, this is up on your board.
Right.
And I feel like since the start of that, we've really kind of developed around to the intention of it. And I feel like MichME this year, for us, it's our first year, really kind of continues to develop that. And the success criteria was never something we talked about. It was always just straight learning targets. Mm-hmm. Tell the kids what they have to know, put it in their language, but academic at the same time. So how do you you know, what form is it written in and what does it have to look like? And
Right.
it was so the nitty gritty of it. And the success criteria to me melded it together as the why. I don't care what the learning objective, the way it's written, or that you're using a sentence stem or whatever. It's how do the kids then know that that's really what they're supposed to do and that they've mastered or at least got the general idea of what's going on.
That's fantastic.
So,
So in the sense that that's supposed to be a growth model, it's truly helping you and the students grow in some fashion.
they feel better. I mean, they'll tell you, they feel better knowing that when they do an exit problem, it's not just an exit problem to see good or bad, but that there's a purpose behind it.
Right.
And if they don't get it, they at least know what they should have done or what they need to go back and look at because they maybe got a piece of the success but not the whole.
Right. I found with my instruction that because I would get so excited about teaching the physics topics because that was my most recent class that sometimes I'd be kind of all over the place with my lesson, and it really helped me to kind of control myself a little bit too. That's great. And we had a conversation before the meeting today, a few of us, about how the norms of collaboration might actually connect with that success criteria and learning targets, and we talked specifically about paraphrasing and how you might use that with the students and the learning targets and success criteria so that it's not just you saying, okay, this is the learning targets for the day or this is the success criteria we're going to focus on. But how can you tie in the students to throughout the lesson, not just the beginning of the lesson, paraphrase back those intentions or learning targets to you or explain how they connect to what they just did or to say, okay, here's the learning targets. What questions might you have about that? So it's the putting ideas on the table piece, so it's a safe environment to do that. So that a lot of us are discovering the power of learning targets and success criteria because we may have been weak in that area. And now we have some strategies to help bring that more to the forefront of our classroom in a safe way. It's important. So thank you for sharing. I'm glad to hear that's going well with your guys' classrooms. Anything else anybody wants to share that's going well? Yeah.
I found a new way to do formative assessment that takes a lot of the paperwork off of us.
That's always a good thing.
I didn't do a ton of paper, or I didn't do a ton of formative assessment because it was just something else to collect from the students and all, and manage and keep track of and look at and try to figure out, okay. And I found an online one that does, you guys probably use it too, quizzes.com. And I love it because I can give the kids something, good snapshot at the end of a lesson or at the end of a chapter. They can see where they're at. I can then get the kid in before the test comes up, either after school or we have a half an hour every day for, we call it achievement hour, where they can go to any teacher and the teacher can make them come to your room before the test, and I can show what the kid needs to do yet before they actually take the test.
Awesome.
And, for 2 or 3 years, I've just bogged down with formative assessment, and by this time of the year, I've just scrapped it
Or
because I'm
given
just
up,
tired
yeah.
of it. And this has just kind of been a godsend because it's,
Do you have to create it, or do they have a big bank? Like,
there's a
they have
huge
fantastic
bank.
bank.
So you just type it, if you want to type in a topic of factoring quadratics, 500 questions will come up and you can
Quizzes.com.
Yeah, it's No, but we have, each department has a program on that, so we just share. I get them on Friday, somebody else gets them on Tuesday, so.
Can you spell it again for me? Q-U-I-Z.
Still the third one down.
This one?
Yeah.
Yeah, what's nice is they tell you to the leveling, so like if you want something that's geared to 7th to 9th grade, or you can pick those questions, or better forward design and backwards design. You don't have to create your own, which Quizlet, a lot of times you have to create your own. Quizlet has that bank there, and you can edit every question if you want. I do it for reviews.
I even did this semester, I didn't do it first semester because I wasn't that familiar with it. I did my pre-test online and I just created an answer because it's multiple choice. I don't know. So that they're not guessing something guessing it correctly and getting it right. They really did not have a clue where they could mark, I don't know, so my pre-test data doesn't get, because for our evaluation, we have to show 60% growth. You know, I don't have to be guessing and getting 50%. They can mark, I don't know.
You can do a live game like Quizlet, but it is timed, which is an anxiety piece for many of our kids, right? I always assign a homework game, and you can attach a homework game directly to your Google Classroom if you have one. And you can determine when you want it to go live through, and they can play it as many times as they want until your deadline. But I've done it topic by topic. I've done a whole review sheet of it. I mean, I've given them something that's 45 questions that go, but they like the immediate right or wrong feedback.
And
I turn the competition off because the kids who can get the answer but not as quick start shutting down. So I turn the competition part off.
Has anybody ever used Socrates.com before? Yeah, Socrative. And I know you mentioned exit slips earlier. That was what I often used for my exit slips as well. Obviously, I'm a bit biased because I just came from a one-to-one school, and I know not everybody's one-to-one, but...
There's something called Woot Math as well.
What was it?
Where they can Woot Math.
Woot Math?
WOOT.
Okay.
Math, and they can show work, and there's graph paper, and they can write equations and all of that.
How do they show work? Just type it in.
If you go into it, the setup is question on this side, and then graph paper with all of your tools on this side.
And they just have to use
And
their
they can use
pad
their
or
mouse,
mouse.
or they can type it in, and it has equation editor in it.
So kind of like that one.
Kind of.
So there's Woot Math, and then Socrative, which you can use your phone for, too. Again, thinking about how you might be able to utilize the norms of collaboration alongside of these tools to just make it an even more positive experience for your kiddos as well. All right, I have the wrong remote in my hand. I want to take some time to give you a minute to dig into some of the rest of the reading. So you have all of chapter 1 in front of you there, and we had left off at page 25, theoretically. And so we would have a few more chapters to kind of read or skim through. And the topics that remain are house talk, burn 5 minutes, good news, and high grade compliments. And for me, as I read through this, a lot of these were either things I had already done or things that just made sense to me. But it was just reaffirming to see that, yeah, this is something I could still utilize regardless of grade level in my classroom, and that this is actually a worthwhile experience. So for example, like the burn 5 minutes. Well, I was very intentional about never jumping right into my curriculum with my students. And sometimes it was structured like good news, and sometimes it wasn't. It was just me, just being me and just talking with the kids. So essentially I was burning 5 minutes to just kind of let them kind of check in to my room and engage with me before we dove into anything else. And so sometimes it was just me by starting out saying, how's it going? And just letting them get it all out, depending on what had happened in the last class or what teacher they were mad at now, or if they're mad at me, get that out of the system then. And not that they're ever mad at me, wink, wink. But all those things are there. So I want to take a few minutes for you to skim through that. If you want to, in your groups, for your large groups, if you want to divide and conquer and share all that information, cool beans. Same thing with my groups of 2. If you want to divide and conquer, cool beans. But just want to give you an opportunity to finish up with this chapter. And again, like I had said last time, I know this book is geared towards having racial conversations in your classroom, and that is not necessarily the point of our session. But the idea behind it being that if you can create an environment safe enough in a classroom to have those conversations, then your environment is safe enough to share ideas about your math practice, right? So that was my purpose in reading it. Yes, it can be, yes. Especially, yes, well, we'll stop there. And then your green paper too has a spot on it on one of the sides for you to jot down some notes. And maybe it's not, so there's categories, what I learned, page number, how can I use it. And maybe it might not be something you learned, but maybe it's just something you see as, yeah, I've used this before, it's valuable. So you can note that there. Things or one thing that might have piqued your attention in that section of the reading, whether it be for positive or negative.
Reminded me of a lot of the restorative practices training that I've had, where how to have those conversations, but make it that safe environment. Because if you don't have that, you're not going to get kids to be open and shared.
Right.
So it kind of goes back to our formal statement.
So not a lot of necessarily new information, but reaffirming. Okay. There. Yes.
I thought it was really interesting about the water cooler and the dining room table, and about having to earn our seats, don't assume an intimacy that does not exist.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really interesting because I don't think I've ever thought about it that way, that even like if you do have like conversations with them, you know, a little bit like about their family, that doesn't mean they're necessarily open about talking things that may be more personal to them, like race or like different things like that.
Sure.
And so just that, to like wait for that invitation and to make sure you're not assuming that there's like a closeness that's not really there.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah, and you can, I think I can remember moments in my past where you can tell by the student's body language whether or not they want to engage in that conversation or not with you. Just tense straight up. Fantastic. Anything else?
I've been struggling throughout this year about how my class starts out the day. I have 8th grade students, and I'm getting them used to the fact that they're going to have homework every day. So we have homework every day that they're assigned as practice. Now, whether they get it right or wrong, I want them to try. But as I'm going around and checking to make sure that they have the homework complete, it takes them 2-3 minutes just to check their answers because I got the answers on the board. The rest of the time, it is them just talking to the shoulder partners, neighbors, and I feel like that's wasted time, but not really wasted time because then they kind of talk. But what I want to do is I like the good news in the first 5 minutes is the fact that I can give them now a warm-up subject. Like on Mondays, just make a good news Monday and share with your shoulder partner while I'm going around the room checking to see if they got the homework done, and then stand up, hand up, pair up with another person and not share what their good news was, but their shoulder partner's good news. So again, practicing that active listening. And then at the end, once I'm done, it only takes me 5-10 minutes, but then they will have stood up, hand up, and paired up with someone sharing some good news of the shoulder partner. So then we can come together and say, okay, what was your good news, and then I'm going to ask the person who you stood up, hand up, paired up with.
Sure.
So I'm kind of seeing almost like a telephone thing.
Right.
Working on those active listening skills.
So you really value the intentional use of that time in using that strategy to sort of build some community amongst your classroom in that time.
That's exactly what I just put. Yeah, building a personal relationship within the classroom with those kind of things. So this is perfect because I've been struggling the first 10 minutes of my day every day. I feel like something is wasted.
Right.
As I'm going around the room, I got 25, 30 papers I got to check.
Right.
Quick.
Got to check.
Do it as quick as possible, but it's still 5-10 minutes.
You still want to do it with fidelity, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we all know that our students love structure, whether they admit it or not. Like, you know, you've seen the difference with a well-managed classroom and a poorly managed classroom. And so they'll value that structure. And I've seen, like, good news, for example, I've seen that done well, and I've seen it done not as well in classrooms where there isn't as much structure, and I've been guilty of it myself. And so there still should be some sort of structure to the procedure that you're going through, and it sounds like you've thought that through already in your class, in your context.
Some rules that we're going to abide by, rules for the warm-up.
Yeah.
And how we're going to do that, and making sure that it's positive and no negative comments and this and that, because I've got a class that just, they come in and they're tough to write off
Yeah.
right now because they just come in
that wall.
Sour look on their face every day.
So an opportunity to rehearse those presuming positive intentions and paying attention to self and others opportunities there.
Right.
Sure. Thank you. Anything else? So I mentioned good news done well and good news done not as well. And I learned from my classroom when I was at KH that I had to try to put a limit to the amount of good newses I would take each morning. Otherwise, it could go on for 25, 30 minutes, which there were days I wouldn't have cared, but there are certainly most days I do care. But yeah, so I would do the airplane stacking. So I'd say, who has good news this morning? And I'd say, some days I would limit it to 3. Some days, if we had a little more time, maybe 5, like on a Friday. And so once the hands went up, I'd say first, second, third, fourth. And we just start from there. But then I had to kind of remember who was what order. But I would usually, also as they were talking, I always had the number here, so I knew what number was next. So the kids were always like, how'd you know we were on 3? That was a long story they just shared. And I'm like, well, because that was number 2. So, little things like that. But so there's structure to everything we do. And the norms can help with that a lot as well. Cool. High grade compliments. Any thoughts about that? Guess what would be the difference between a low grade compliment and a high grade compliment?
Said what it's about. I like this one. So, like a low grade compliment is, oh, you look nice today. And actually, I had a male teacher when I was doing student teaching tell me that he found that to be a dangerous territory. To tell a young lady that she looked nice had become problematic.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it was not, I like your sweater. Well, why are you looking at areas of my sweater?
Right.
Became so I think that can get you into a dangerous territory in a lot of situations now. Or sometimes I'll tell a student that I like their haircut, and they did not like their haircut, and this is an unhappy time that I mentioned it.
Yeah.
So the high grade compliments are about their character, I think is really what it was about. What's inside you and what kind of value you maybe add to the classroom or to the school or in your friendships, those kinds of things about a person, which I thought was really nice. Not even like, you did a good job on this problem, which isn't like a physical comment, but still isn't saying something really strong versus like, I really enjoy how you persevere through these. I really appreciate that perseverance that you have. I noticed that it felt would be more of a high grade compliment.
Mm-hmm.
But I like that he was talking about having the students do that with each other, because I don't struggle to have relationships with my students and have a good time talking to my students, like finding those 5 minutes or good news just because of the environment that my school has. That's not an issue. I have great relationships with all my kids. I would love to have more of them learning to be kind to each other, because that's a hard skill for all teenagers.
Sure. So you'd value an opportunity for the students to affirm each other. And has anyone ever done affirmations in their classroom before? So this is what I always did in my last day of school. It's something I picked up from coaching, and I do it with my cross-country and track teams. After every meet, if we go out to eat afterwards as a team, because we travel a lot in college, we'll sit down at the restaurant, and before our food is served, everyone goes around and shares at least one compliment to one of their teammates about something they had seen either at the meet or during that week of practice. And it ended up being really kind of a cool experience where maybe the athlete who wasn't being recognized for winning was getting kudos for doing something that someone else had noticed that they didn't think they had seen. And so I started getting the feedback that was really helping to develop a great culture amongst our team. So I thought, why don't I try doing that in my classroom? But what we did is we would save it till the end of the school year. And the last day of school, I'd have my whole class sit in a circle. And we would each go through every student. And it would take the whole class period. I won't lie about that. But if we were all in here and we were talking about Carolyn, each of us would go around and say something positive about Carolyn. And then we'd go to the next person in the circle all the way around. And it always resulted in tears. Someone was crying at the end because they felt so affirmed. And I would tear up sometimes too. But then to hear them say that back, because we would include ourselves in that too. So when it was Marcus and I, they would get a chance to affirm us as well. And you know how you feel when you get that comment from a student or a parent about the good job you're doing, and to hear that from the kids' mouths themselves was really powerful. So it doesn't obviously have to be done at the end of the school year, but something to maybe consider as an opportunity in your classroom at some point. Yeah.
Ever tried it, like, like I've done it where every kid has the paper and then everybody has to write something on there. I was wondering, like, are there better affirmations that you have to say to the face, or are they?
I think go either way, right? So yes, unintentionally when we ran out of time, and so we quickly broke out paper and had everybody write it out to finish up. Or for my cross-country team this fall, we did our banquet a little bit differently at the end of the year. So we were actually bowling, so we didn't really have time to do it. So I had everybody, everyone had their own like canister that they would put affirmations into. And then I really enjoyed kind of sitting down privately later and reading those myself, my own quiet time and reflecting on that. And I think there are certain students that are going to feel more comfortable responding in that privacy than they would publicly. So, yeah, I think it could go either way, though. Because in the same token, there's the student that's held more accountable by having to say it out loud, right? So, yeah.
I remember doing that in school, and I still somewhere. I know I still have mine.
Right.
And I remember it being fun to look back occasionally and read what people wrote.
Yeah.
And then sometimes, though, it's like, I wonder if you get less of the same responses by making it verbal, whereas on paper, sometimes people see what somebody else wrote and then kind of like
right, copy it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. Actually, the affirmations they wrote down for me for coaching cross country this fall are still sitting on my desk back at Grace right now, so that when I have my down day, I can look back at that. But it reminds me of like when I was in elementary school and I'd get a Valentine, and how excited I was because somebody thought about me like that. It's kind of the same idea. Like, have that tangible piece there to hold on to is valuable too. So I guess maybe it just depends on the nature of your class, right? So at any rate, if there's anything else you want to share about that section, please speak up, but I'm going to kind of trudge forward. The rest of the slide deck really comes from Rusty and Marcus and Andrew as far as what they want us to accomplish with this meeting. So they reflected back on the productive belief that teachers who collaborate with colleagues inside and outside their school are more effective. And all mathematics teachers are collectively responsible for student learning, the improvement of professional knowledge base, and everyone's effectiveness. I love this opportunity. Like, even when you got done reading and I could hear you talking about other things that weren't necessarily related to the reading, it's still that opportunity that oftentimes you don't get to share outside of your classroom walls, right? Like you two collaborating about the same curriculum you're using, even though you're at different schools and different counties. That's powerful. And we so often get siloed into our classroom walls. So it doesn't bother me that you maybe were talking about something else because you're still growing by being here today. So that's the collective belief that we all share. And they wanted us to really take some time to reflect on some of the evidence that's in your implementation guides. And I know we're a little spotty on our evidence because of the nature of things. But I'm hopeful that somebody might have some evidence that they're willing and comfortable enough to share. The protocol goes like this, and this is within your table group, by the way. You're going to kind of revisit the evidence if you have it listed in your implementation guide, and if you don't have it written down, maybe you know it in your mind. Whoever's sharing, that would be person A, they shares the evidence and the impact that they have seen in their classroom. And when it says no crosstalk, that means nobody else speaks. It's just that person presenting. When that person is done, the rest of the group shares their likes and wonders using those sentence stems. I like, I wonder. So again, we're presuming positive intentions and you're paying attention to self and others. You're just simply putting ideas on the table with your wonderings. Person A is then given an opportunity to respond. And then person A can also say, well, my next steps going forward might be to try this. So this was the same protocol that we used at Kent Innovation High with our students, too, when we were evaluating project work, where the student would share their work, the group and the facilitator would provide likes and wonders. They get a chance to respond back to that, and then we would discuss next steps. So we would do this with our students as well as with our staff. So why don't we take about 5 minutes within your group. Each of you get a chance to kind of look through your implementation guide. If you've got something, share some of the data you've collected. If not, just based on your experiences, where has there been value? And I'm specifically thinking about the things that I wrote up on the board here that we've covered this year. Nerves of collapse, and any of these pieces from the book that have come up. I think we tend to all go more towards the norms from my personal experience. Just feel like there's a little bit more structure to that maybe that we're comfortable with, and that's cool. But share some of the experiences you've had with those things this year and some of the evidence you've observed and or collected, and then take an opportunity for your group to share their likes and wonderings about those observations. 5 minutes. See you soon. Not have been enough time to fully discuss evidence and all that, and I apologize for that. I want to make sure we get through everything else that we need to for Rusty. But a couple observations for me. First of all, you sound very passionate about your experiences and your evidence, and I value that highly. I know that we're all aware that there's always an excuse for something. There's always an excuse to not do these things we've talked about. And we need to make sure that we're mindful of that and reminding ourselves that we can't let excuses always get in the way. The other observation I make is with the protocol itself. And me coming from an adaptive school where we went through these protocols all the time, we were very well trained at sticking to the protocol. And I noticed that when we break apart sometimes to do some of these things, we're immediately breaking protocol. And there's immediate crosstalk, and there's immediately questioning what the other person is saying, and that's okay. I get it, but I would challenge you to try to honor the protocols with these and practice that with your students, because if you get your students to stick to the protocol, it's more structured and they're going to be more on task, and that's hard. It takes effort, but good things don't come easily. So be mindful of that moving forward. Let's see if my clicker is going to work. There it goes. We're going to kind of skip past this because we've kind of already discussed some of our experiences. So I'd love us to jump into the bit.ly down here at the bottom of the screen for MichME D4. I think I froze the screen until I unfreeze. We got a couple of business items to take care of. And this is one of those things. For what it's worth to you, I get notified by Rusty if you guys don't finish the surveys. They keep track of all that data. They actually do check. So they encourage me to be kind of like concerned about making sure you complete the surveys and whatnot. So please do. If for no other reason than I can look good in front of my friends. Next step would be to go back to our implementation guide. Thank you for completing the survey and just reading the words there. Obviously, this document is evolving. If we've had, struggles to keep up with the snow days and all that, now's our chance to get back on board with that. So they would like us to review our commitment in our implementation guide and to state our intention moving forward. So it looks like these are the parts of your implementation guide that we need to complete. So it says intention completed during breakout day number 4. What shifts might you take back to your classroom toward your commitment? And maybe it's just recommitting back to where we have been. Please in the future. And just last thoughts would be just, why not this thing is going to work? Just kind of a reflection. What might be some things that are vital for you to communicate back to your mathematics building team, or just back to the school in general? And I'm sure you have lots of thoughts in those areas. So if you've got the implementation guide completed and the survey done, that's all I ask of you for the day, and I'm done. I hope you enjoy your time getting caught back up. I hope for no more snow days for you. And let me know if you need anything from me. If I can help you in any way, shoot me an email. Have a great day. What might be some things that are vital for you to communicate back to your mathematics building team, or just back to the school in general? And I'm sure you have lots of thoughts in those areas. So if you've got the implementation guide completed and the survey done, that's all I ask of you for today, and I'm done. I hope you enjoy your time getting caught back up. I hope for no more snow days for you. And let me know if you need anything from me. If I can help you in any way, shoot me an email. Have a great day.